What is up, Generation Ember? In this video, we are going to be talking about the ever so elusive topic, subtracting integers. We're going to jump in, we're going to look at some rules and some examples. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Lesson 3 is going to be talking about subtracting integers. We're going to start talking about subtracting integers by drawing a number line. I'm going to draw mine with tick marks at around the 1/10 of an inch mark because my ruler has 1/10 of an inch marks on it. So I may as well take advantage of them. It's useful. So I'm going to draw right there a larger mark for my 0. And then I think I'm going to do a 1/20 of an inch, or I could switch to something that you're probably going to have. That's probably even better, isn't it? Let's switch to a 1/4 of an inch even. Let's make it nice and big so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to go and do 1/4 of an inch marks. That's probably plenty. It doesn't have to be perfect, and if you're doing this to take notes, definitely don't stress about it being perfect. All right, since I am doing this on camera, I have the opportunity to make it look nice and neat, so I'm going to take the time to do that because it will be a better overall quality thing. I'm going to add the rest of my marks. And for completeness, we'll go ahead and add our ending arrows. I'm going to do them kind of fancy because I can, and it doesn't take me much more time since I'm doing it on video, so why not? Do it fancy schmancy. Because it makes me happy. You can do little things to make your life happier. More power to you, buddy. For sure, for sure, for sure. Absolutely. So, I'm going to label my numbers on here. I'll start off with my 0 mark. This, again, on a number line, whether we're talking about a 2-dimensional number line or a 1-dimensional number line like this one, this is called the origin. We're going to label this as 0. The 0 point of a number line is the origin. So we're going to label these as positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Right? That's probably plenty. We don't have to necessarily label them all. And then we've got our negatives on the other side, right? That's probably plenty, right? So we're talking about subtracting. We've talked before about adding integers. We're now going to talk about subtracting integers. So adding integers, we're going to the right on a number line, right? So if we're going positive, then we're going this direction. But in this lesson, we're going to flip that script, and that's really all subtracting is. And this is really important to understand that subtracting and adding, really, we're talking about the same thing, the same operation. We're just moving on the number line. Addition, we happen to be moving to the right. Subtraction, we happen to be moving to the left, right? So we're going the other way. So that's really what we're talking about. This is probably review. Putting this, if I choose to put this live on YouTube, it may or may not be reviewed depending on who watches this video. All right, but we're talking about subtracting integers. We're talking about going the other way, going down to the left on the number line. The numbers are getting smaller, reaching 0 and then starting to go backwards, right? And that's really important. Remember, especially if you're watching this on YouTube later, or if you're in my class and you're needing the extra review, integers are positive and negative whole numbers. So all of these numbers over here are also integers. 1, 4, 6. 3, etc. are all integers, and -2, -5, -1, all of those are integers, right? So integers are the positive and negative whole numbers. So subtracting those. Moving to the left on the number line. Let's jump into it with some kind of examples. Now, when we're talking about these with examples, we're talking specific. We usually think about this with some really simple rules, right? So when you're talking about this on a number line, it's really obvious. So if I have, say, a 5 and I want to subtract a 3, right? Then we're going to move to on the number line. We're going to move 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, and we're going to end up right here. So 5 minus 3 is 2, right? Really, really, really straightforward. Okay. So our rule for subtracting integers. Now, when we're talking about subtraction, a lot of times we're talking about adding things with different signs. Now, this is really important. This is what I've found to be a place that's really, really tricky. So if we're thinking about this without a number line, it can be useful to think about what I teach in my classes is a ka-chink, ka-chink. I know that sounds silly. Well, if you've watched some of my other videos, you may have seen that before, but look at it like this. Let's look at the same problem, but let's do it without, I know the number line is right in front of us, but let's think about it kind of without the number line. And this is really important because when we're thinking about integers, we're thinking about positives and negatives. So let's look at 5 minus 3. So 5 minus 3. Okay, so this is something that I teach. Now, I usually teach it in context of minus a negative, which is a admittedly complicated thing, and it's really obvious to see that something's going wrong. But if you are having trouble with subtracting integers, it can be really useful to think anytime we have a minus sign in between two numbers, right? You can do a ka-chink, ka-chink. So in this case, our ka-chink, ka-chink is going to look like this, plus a negative. So this is really important, right? Because subtraction is the same thing as adding a negative. Those are the same two operations. And that is really important, which is why I'm saying all these words and spending all this time talking about this concept. It's really, really important, okay? Excuse me. So that's what this is. Now, when you think about this, if we think about this way, now the rule I teach for adding and subtracting integers, if we teach all of this as one lesson, the adding integers and the subtracting integers all at the same time, then we're looking for whether the signs are the same or different. So we want to know whether the signs, whether they are the same or different, right? We want to know whether the signs are the same or different, okay? So in this case, in this one, it's really easy because it's really easy to see because if there's nothing there, then we say that's positive. So this is clearly a positive 5, right? Because we've known numbers that don't have a sign in front. We've known that from the very, very beginning when we first started learning math, that if a number doesn't have a sign there, then it's positive. So that 5 is positive. And if we go ahead and ka-chink, ka-chink and put plus a negative instead of just a minus, then it's also really clear that we've got a positive here and we've got a negative here. Now, if the signs on addition subtraction problem are different, then what we do is we subtract and we keep the sign of the bigger number. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not aware, the pound sign, or as what we call it nowadays, the hashtag sign in math, that often means number, right? So when we're adding, subtracting, so like if we're not multiplying or dividing, adding or subtracting, then if we are doing this, we look and see if the signs are different, which they are in this case. Then we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Now, this is really straightforward, right? Because 5 minus 3, we already know from a long time ago that the answer is 2. And it's positive 2 with this method of thinking because 5 is bigger than 3 and it's positive. So that one's really, really obvious, right? Now, if we're looking at one that's a little bit less obvious, so something along the lines of, let's say, 6 minus 8. Okay. Now, again, if we're thinking about this on the number line, then we would come up here and we would start out at 6, and then we go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so we end up at -2, right? So if we're looking at the number line, and we do that, but it's really a pain to draw a number line on every problem. And the more lengthy our problems get, the more of a pain it's going to be to do this every time. So we really need to think of a way to think about it without a number line, which is the whole point of these rules and this rule that's happening here. And so if we do, and we think about it, if you're struggling with this, again, you can ka-chink that because we have a minus in the middle. So we ka-chink that guy. So now it's really obvious that the 6 is positive and the 8 is negative. So the signs are different. So we subtract and we keep the sign of the bigger number. So 8 minus 6 is 2, right? The bigger number is 8. So we end up with -2 as our final answer. Now, I alluded to something earlier that I want to make sure we have in our notes. We want to have at least one example of this, and that's if we have 2 minuses in the middle. So let's look at one like that. So say we have, let's do 8. We'll pull the 8 back in from over here. And let's do minus, I'm going to do a parentheses. This parentheses, all this is for is to make my work neater in this particular problem. So minus a -6. Okay. Now, so the title of this lesson is Subtracting Integers, but spoiler alert, this one is going to turn into last lesson, and that's adding integers. Because when we have negatives in the middle, we ka-chink, right? We've been ka-chinking into plus and minus, right? But if you keep ka-chink here, then it's ka-chink. See, we cross those both. And so you end up with 8 plus 6. So we've kind of gone back a lesson. So now the signs are the same this time. So if they're the same, like we learned in our lesson 3, adding integers, we add and keep the sign that they both have, right? And so 8 plus 6, of course, is 14. Right? So let's do one more with that minus and negative just to make sure we understand what we're doing there. Okay, so let's do -12. We're going to jump up to 2 digits. Oh no, it's scary. It's going to be okay though, right? -12 minus -5. All right, we got that minus in the middle. So we're going to ka-chink those. Ka-chink, right? So now we're looking at the signs the same or different. Well, this one's negative and this one's positive. That's important to note. We can't check whether they're positive or negative until we ka-chink, right? If we get used to it, we can probably skip this one, but especially when you're learning, this is a good idea to ka-chink always if we have a minus in the middle. This is really, really useful. Okay, so we've got a negative and we've got a positive. Signs are different, so we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So 12 minus 5, of course, is 7. And we look here, so is 12 or 5 bigger? Of course, the 12 is bigger, and it's the negative one. So our answer is -7, right? So this is really useful. If we learn these rules and we do this way and think about it this way, this is a short lesson because it's kind of a stub of some things that we've learned for a long time. So that's why this video is not very long and the lesson is not very long. But it's really, really helpful because this one, if we were going to go and we're going to do this with the number line, I'm going to scratch this out without even really taking the time to draw it pretty and whatever else just to understand how ugly and messy this can be. If we try to think about this as the number line, we've got to end up going over here and we've got to think, okay, wait, 12. Oh, wait, no, it's -12. So we've got to be on this side of the 0 at -12. And then we've got to think, okay, we're going to count up and we're going to do up here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -12. Now I might doing -11 or negative 11. So I do -11, -10. I know that doesn't look too big and too bad, but if we start dealing with numbers like minus -84, for example, that's going to go crazy because that would turn into +84. We have to keep going forever and ever and ever until we get way over. But let's do that thinking about our method this way and see if we can see how much easier it's going to be than drawing that big old crazy ugly number line. Let's do that one as an example. How about? So if we have -12 minus -84, now we've got a minus in the middle, so we're going to ka-chink, right? Bang, bang, right? So we end up with negative 12 plus 84. The signs are different, so we subtract and we keep the sign. Right now, this is a 2-digit. So if we want to scratch paper that guy, we can. This one you can probably do in your head if you're at this point. But it's often a good idea to sanity check to put that over in scratch paper real quick because it doesn't take long and it makes us make less mistakes. So 84 minus 12, 4 minus 2 is 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. So our answer is 78. Now we need to see whether it's positive or negative 78. So which is bigger, 12 or 84? Well, 84 is bigger, and it's positive, so my answer is positive 78. So guys and gals, that is really all there is to subtracting integers. It's a short lesson. It's a short idea. We're really building on a bunch of concepts that we already have. And there are a couple of takeaways that I really want you to take away from this. Couple of three. One is, especially when you're unit learning, it can be really useful anytime we have that minus in the middle to ka-chink those. Or if it's two minuses, we ka-chink those, right? So if you just get into the habit of anytime there's a minus in the middle, ka-chink or ka-chink. Either one that works. And that really is going to help us understand the same sign or different sign. Once we know that, then we follow our rules. And if the signs are different, then we subtract and we keep the sign of the bigger number.